Okay, ready to start. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councillor Diane Donaldson, and I'll be chairing this subcommittee A of the Licensing and Public Protection Committee of Birmingham City Council. Before we start, can you all please mute your microphones for the moment in order to improve the sound quality whilst I outline the procedure? Can you also please turn off your microphones with the exception of committee members, unless you're the person speaking? This is in order to reduce bandwidth. Committee members, could everyone attending today's meeting please put their mobile phones on silent and ensure they are situated in a room or environment which is free from distractions or unnecessary noise emanating from radios, TVs, etc. Thank you for that. I'm speaking slowly and clearly so everyone can follow. It's vitally important, for what I hope are obvious reasons, that those attending the meeting and making representations are able to hear me and members of my subcommittee and officers. Any distractions brought to my attention could result in the meeting being suspended temporarily or to another date and time under the regulations for these types of meetings. I also confirm this is a public meeting and is therefore being live streamed on the City Council's website in order that the general public can view it. I advise that this is a public meeting. It will be webcast for live or subsequent broadcast via the Council's meeting YouTube site, and the link which will be provided in the agenda. And that members of the press public may record and take photographs except where there are confidential or exempt items. Members are reminded they must declare all relevant pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests arising from any business to be discussed at this meeting. If a disclosable pecuniary interest is declared, a member must not speak or take part in that agenda item. Any declarations will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Apologies were submitted on behalf of Councillor Davies and Councillor Beauchamp and Councillor Straker-Wells, and Councillor Donaldson, Councillor Sharp and Councillor Locke were the nominated substitute members. Can I welcome you to this hearing for an application in respect of McDonalds, Asda Minworth, Warmley Ash Road, Sutton Coldfield, B76 1XL. I'll begin with some introductions. As stated previously, I'm Councillor Diane Donaldson and I'm chairing this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. With me are other members of the subcommittee, Councillors Mike Sharp and Councillor Mary Locke. Also present in the meeting are the following officers: Licensing Officer David Kennedy.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Good afternoon. Committee Manager, Meeting Manager Katie Townsend.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Good afternoon. And Committee Lawyer Joanne Swampilai.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Good afternoon. Could I ask all parties to identify themselves, please? Firstly, the applicant.
Ma'am, good afternoon. My name is Leo Charalambides and I am the barrister representing McDonalds this afternoon. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Do we have Elaine Rayner present?
Yes, I'm Elaine Rayner and I'm the solicitor on behalf of the applicant who prepared and submitted the application.
Good afternoon. Next, those making representations. Maureen Murphy.
Chair, we've haven't received any notification of their wish to participate in the hearing today. However, the representation is still maintained.
Could I ask if any persons making representation wishes to withdraw their representations at this stage of the hearing?
They haven't, Chair, no. The representation is still maintained.
Thank you. I assume that all parties have read and understood the Licensing Committee's procedural rules set out within the notice of today's hearing. Please know that given the nature of today's proceedings, I may, at my discretion, amend the procedural rules to reflect the fact that this meeting is taking place online, but wish to assure you that any such amendments will not impact on the party's right to a fair hearing. We'll be using the chat function in Microsoft Teams to communicate. One of the icons on your toolbar is a speech bubble. Click the speech bubble to go into chat. If you do not have access to the chat function for any reason, please use the raise a hand function to indicate you wish to speak. The button is usually fourth from the right on the toolbar. You can, of course, indicate verbally that you wish to speak at the appropriate time. Can you all confirm that you have access to the chat facility by typing your name now? Officers will also type their job title. Meeting will not proceed until you all have done so.
That's everyone, Chair.
Thank you, Katie. Please keep this chat column open for the entire duration of the meeting in order that everyone can follow the messages being posted in the chat. If any participant has dialed in on an audio telephone run Microsoft Teams, please speak now to confirm that you can hear and be heard. I don't believe we have anyone dialing in today. With the exception of subcommittee members, please keep your camera off unless you're the person speaking. If there are problems with bandwidth which cause difficulties with the sound, I may, in my discretion, ask everyone to turn their cameras off in order that the meeting can proceed with everyone able to hear and be heard. Does anyone wish to make any preliminary points at this stage? If so, please indicate that you wish to raise a point by typing speak into the chat function or using the raise a hand function now. Thank you. I'll now briefly outline the procedure which we'll be following at today's hearing. Firstly, the Licence Officer, David Kennedy, will present the report. Then the applicant and their representative will be asked to present their case. We're asking if this could be kept to approximately 20 minutes. Then those making representations will be invited to make their case. Again, approximately 20 minutes will be allowed for this part of the hearing. Can I ask all parties to speak as slowly and as clearly as they possibly can, because the officers are taking notes by hand for the minutes. And the meeting is also being live streamed on the City Council's website. If at any time it is somebody else's turn to speak, please mute your microphone and use the chat function to communicate if necessary. Please know that members of the subcommittee will be able to ask questions at any stage, but will try to do so at the conclusion of each presentation. Cross-examination by the applicant and those making representations will not be permitted unless the members consider it appropriate. Where questions are raised by the members of the subcommittee or by those present, please signify this by using the chat facility set out on the right-hand side of the screen you are viewing this meeting on. The meeting manager will alert me if you did not notice messages in the chat. I will determine verbally or in writing on the chat facility the order in which the questions are dealt with. Additionally, you may also seek to notify a question or point verbally in the usual way at the appropriate point. So at any point in the meeting, if you wish to speak, please type the word speak into the chat function and the meeting manager will ensure that we come to you at the appropriate moment. If at any point you cannot hear or are having problems with your internet connection, please use the chat facility to alert the meeting The chair will then ask the person speaking to repeat what they have just said. It is therefore important that you use a chat function as soon as you're unable to hear the person speaking. It may well be that there's a problem caused by people still having their microphones or cameras on, which creates interference. So I will remind everyone to please mute your microphones and turn off your cameras when you're not the person speaking. Could I point out that occasionally it might be necessary for the subcommittee to take legal advice? At my discretion, I may ask all parties to wait in this meeting whilst members and the relevant officers withdraw to take legal advice using a separate meeting within Microsoft Teams. We will then return to this meeting and continue. Please note if at any time the live stream being broadcast on the City Council's website fails, I will ask you all to mute your microphones and cameras and to stop speaking until the live stream is restored. If at any time this meeting goes into private session, the meeting manager will pause the live stream. Once the private part of the meeting is over, I will ask the meeting manager to confirm that the live stream has resumed before we continue. At the conclusion of the hearing, I will invite all parties to make a brief closing submission. Can I stress no decision will be taken until all the evidence has been heard? At the decision-making stage, the members and the relevant officers withdraw from the meeting in order to determine the decision. They will go into a separate Microsoft Teams meeting. In the event the members need to clarify any point, you will be telephoned by the meeting manager. The members will then make their decision. Notification of the determination of the application will be sent out to all parties within 5 days. I hope that's reasonably straightforward. Can I ask the Licence Officer, David Kennedy, to present the report, please? As slowly and as clearly as possible, please.
Thank you, Chair. McDonald's Restaurants Limited applied on the 13th of July 2021 for the grant of a premises licence for McDonald's Restaurant, Asda Minworth, Walmley Ash Road, Sutton Coldfield, B76 1XL. The purpose of the report is to consider a representation that has been made in respect of the application, which seeks to permit the provision of late night refreshment for consumption both on and off the premises to operate from 11 p.m. until 12 midnight Monday to Friday, with the premises to remain open to the public from 6 a.m. until 12 midnight Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. until 10 p.m. Saturday, and 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. on a Sunday. A representation has been received which is attached to Appendix 1. The application is at Appendix 2 and site location plans are at Appendix 3. When carrying out its licensing functions, a licensing authority must have regard to Birmingham City Council's Statement of Licensing Policy and the guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182 of the Act. The licensing authority is required to take such steps as it considers appropriate to promote the full licensing objectives. The options available to the committee today are to grant the licence in accordance with the application, to reject the application, to grant the licence subject to conditions modified to such an extent as considered appropriate, or exclude from the licence any of the licensable activities to which the application relates. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. Now the applicant's presentations. Would the applicant or their representatives like to make their presentations now, please?
Ma'am, thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. Ma'am, this is a relatively straightforward application. McDonald's has been in a long-term relationship with the Asda Superstore chain for quite some time. As part of that relationship, McDonald's places and then services McDonald's restaurants within the Asda group, and they operate within the footprint of the Asda restaurant. The Superstore, what you'll see with this restaurant is that you can only access it from inside Asda. There's no external or independent accessibility, and we match the opening times of the Asda Superstore. So we will close at midnight along with Asda, and then on Saturdays we'll close at 10, and on Sundays we'll close at p.m. What you'll have seen, I hope, from the operating schedule is that we have our full operating schedule, which is for CCTV, staff safe, the conflict management training, the litter watch, all of the things you'd expect, as well as the fact that this store is within another store. So effectively, you're like the almost like a cream pie in that you've got all the protections from Asda, and then inside all of that, the protections from McDonald's are operating. So you have two socially responsible operators looking after the site and the surrounding areas. In terms of the representation, we've looked at it carefully and considered it. You and your colleagues will know, however, that the issues raised go beyond licensing concerns, so things such as traffic, deliveries, road safety, the flight plan, and so on. All of these are not relevant to the licensing regime. They might be relevant to planning, but as a matter of planning, which concerns amenity considerations, it's already been determined that this supermarket with a food retail outlet, both on sales and off sales, is appropriate for that area, whether it's operated by Asda or McDonald's or anyone else. So those amenity issues are covered. In terms of the licensing objectives, as I've said, we are a store that is effectively cushioned by Asda that then operates within that. So our impact on the surrounding area is going to be limited. And in any event, when you look at the way we operate in terms of having respect for our neighbours, respect for the outside area, care in respect of our patrons, any concerns that might arise are ameliorated. You'll have seen, of course, that none of your responsible authorities have raised any concerns. We have been in correspondence with them in advance of this hearing in any event, and they are satisfied. So your experts in terms of crime and disorder, in terms of nuisance, in terms of amenity, in terms of safety, are all themselves satisfied. Mom, given that there is very little in the representations for me to engage with, all I can do is commend this application to you and ask you and your colleagues to grant it as applied for. Nonetheless, obviously, we're here to answer any questions that you and your colleagues may have, and I suspect that that may be the best use of our time, given that this is an application similar to many others that your local authority and surrounding local authorities have heard. You'll know that our premises are rarely involved in reviews or other issues and tend to be a responsible operator within our local communities. So I'll close by commending the application to you and asking if you and your colleagues have any questions that I can help you with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lambidis. Can I just move over to Elaine Rayner if she wants to add anything before we move over to members' questions?
Elaine's just here in case we need any information. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, right, we'll move over to members' questions. Are there any questions from members?
Yes, please, Chair. Can I just ask Leo, I know that McDonald's look after the outside areas when it comes to the litter and that. But because you joined in with Asda, just like us all, well, not like us all, but people tend to go out and park outside when they're bought to McDonald's. And they've got bad legs when it comes to walking to bins. They tend to throw things out the window. And I just wondered, who would it come under, McDonald's because they've sold the commodity, or Asda because it's on their land? So I hope I've explained that properly to you.
So what we do is we do both. We, as a store, know that for whatever reason, whether it's McDonald's or anything else, people just, as you say, can't be bothered to walk to a bin. And it's bad for our business and it's bad for the community for litter to be visible. So we have in our conditions the litter picks. Those are our responsibility. Asda has its own litter picks at that they run at their own time. But we, as McDonald's, will be having our litter picks. They tend to start at dawn and then continue throughout the day until sunset or closing time. All our litter picks, particularly those after dark, are risk assessed as part of our insurance. It generally means that we always cover our curtilage. So here at this site, because we've got the car park, because it's well lit, we will be covering that throughout the day. McDonald's also pick up all litter, whether it's ours or Asda's or anywhere else. So, for example, the 24-hour Asda petrol station, if they throw away any of their to-go food and it's near, we don't ignore that, and we pick that up too. So that's how we operate, because we take full responsibility for any litter that's generated in our surrounding area.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. I've got a question that I'd like to ask, and that's about the delivery, the external deliveries. Will they be delivered to outside residents, or will they be delivered to people sitting in cars in the car park, for example? Could you elaborate on the operation?
Site. No, absolutely. So deliveries are huge in licensing, as we all know. The way this site is organised is you have to go through Asda to get into McDonald's. So the idea of having delivery drivers, or the people that come and collect, coming through the Asda to collect just isn't feasible. So the current physical building does not lend itself to deliveries at all. And so that's not in the current plan at the moment. I don't think it's even in the future plan either, in terms of the physical layout of the building. I'm quite sure Elaine could confirm that, because that's certainly my instructions. Elaine, can you confirm that, please?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, it's for takeaway and eating. So it's people going in and buying their food. So they park up, going and buy their food, and then drive to wherever they're wanting to eat their food. Yeah, that's how I understand it to be.
Thank you, Elaine.
And will there be larger bins like the type that McDonald's have on site, where the bigger bins than the normal, because the McDonald's, the packaging is quite substantial, so will bigger bins be installed on the site?
We always install bins in our surrounding area. I don't quite know what the particular agreement is with Asda, but generally speaking, Asda will have some of its own bins, and we will also have ours, because, as you're probably aware, our bins are also branded. So they have the dual function of raising awareness and also contributing to our litter pick. I don't have access to the particular agreement with this site as to how many bins there are or where they'd be located. It tends to be quite fluid, so that we can locate bins where we need them, as we see, and if we see problems arise. So if our litter picks find that there's a particular area where there's a concentration of
More questions from members before we move on?
Could I just ask, Chair, if it was necessary, would extra bins be added if you found that it was needed?
Yes. So what happens with our litter collection is we have our litter pickers. They're required to sort of tick that they've collected and give back any feedback or report. And so we have a map of the area and an awareness. That's reviewed with the manager and then the area manager on a regular basis. So if we're identifying areas where there is an accumulation of litter that has a poor impact on the company, we go in and do that. What we also do is we get involved regularly with the local authority to sponsor sort of wider litter pick areas, because as we know in licensing, once you leave our immediate vicinity, what you do in terms of your own bad behaviour, we can't police. But one way that we look at that is where there are local authorities that have, for example, nearby parks or open areas, and there are community litter picks, we'll often sponsor those, participate in those, and they can be held annually or biannually, depending on the local authority. So we kind of buy into that because we're quite committed to that. So it's always kept under review, and whatever we can do to assist in that, we do it ourselves and cooperate with local partners and agencies in the area.
Thank you. Right, so we'll move on to, can those making representations please present their case now? I'm not sure we have anyone in attendance today.
Sorry, Chair. No, the objector isn't in attendance today, but just following up on the question, because I've had a quick look at one of the questions you raised, was about the McDonald's delivery.
Yes.
There's an area on the plan where I think it shows a collection point with a window adjacent to the car park. I was just wondering if the applicant confirm whether that is purely for delivery drivers and not potentially as a drive-through.
It's not for a drive-through, so there's no drive-through facilities at this premises. And also the current delivery situation is that we're not looking at having deliveries from this site.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. So that is all of the submissions on behalf of those making representations. Before we go to members' questions, are there any more questions from members?
No, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. So do those making representations wish to make a closing submission?
No, we don't have anyone making representations today.
Okay, the applicant, no closing.
Mum, I've probably said very much. There's no evidence in respect of undermining the licensing objectives. You have an operating schedule. It hasn't been criticised. All the matters you'd expect in that operating schedule are there. This is a modest application. It matches the opening of the ASDA and it's part of the facilities of the supermarket and in-house dining within that. I commend the application to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now ask all parties to leave the Microsoft Teams meeting, and the members and the committee lawyer and the committee manager will go into the private session while the subcommittee makes its decision. You'll be notified of the decision of the subcommittee within 5 working days. Thank you, everyone.